So when you're creating a 3D scene in Godot 4, what you're going to want to start with is creating a world you can walk around on. If you look in the scene tree in the top left, you can see the various default nodes you can create. We're going to want a 3D node, and then in here we're going to want a mesh to be the floor. So with this node 3D selected, we can either click this plus or hit Control and A, and then we can create a new node to add as a child of that. We want a mesh instance. This mesh instance is going to be our floor. So to be a large flat area, we can choose a plane to be our mesh. In the inspector on the right, with that mesh instance selected, there is a mesh property that's now visible. You can click the drop down to the right of it here, and you can select a new mesh there, or in our case, a new plane mesh. This plane mesh is about 2 meters across. We want that to be a bit bigger so we've got some more space to run around, so let's increase the size to 20 by 20. There we go, we've got a big old plane now. If we click this mesh button at the top of the viewport with that mesh instance 3D selected, we get some options for useful default actions for mesh instances. And the one we want here is create try-mesh static body. What that will do is it will create a static body and it will create a collision shape in the same shape as our plane. So I click that, straight off the bat we get a static body and we get a collision shape, and that will let our player stand on that and not fall through. So now that's set up, we can create our player. You have a few choices for nodes that are useful for creating characters, either character body, if we go to body in the add node section, if I search body in create new node, you can see we get character body and rigid dynamic body. I really like using rigid dynamic bodies, but the staple for creating characters is character body. Rigid dynamic body has lots of physics built in, so it's useful for things like bouncy balls or projectiles or things that you want physics to interact with, so if you want a character that ragdolls, it's useful. But the standard is to use a character body because you get a lot of fine-grained control over how the player will move. So let's create a new character body, and we can add a mesh that will be our player's body as a child of this. So with that selected, hit Control A again, and let's add a mesh instance. And this time the mesh instance can be a capsule. Beans are the most common staple in game dev for creating a player character. So here's our bean. You'll notice our bean is clipping through the floor at the moment. We can just select our character body and click the green arrow and drag to move everything up a bit so we're not clipping through the floor anymore. Now, in the same way as we created our static body, we need to create a collision shape for our player so that they won't fall through the floor. With this capsule selected, let's click that mesh drop down again, and then this time let's create a simplified convex collision sibling. We don't want to create a collision shape that's perfectly rounded, it's just going to have a lot of needless triangles. So when you create a simplified one, if I just hide that top bit, go forwards a bit and look around, you can see at the top here we've just got a much more simplified shape that'll be more performant. So we've got our player, we've got their mesh, and we've got the collision shape. Now we can dive into adding a camera that the player will be able to look around with. The camera is going to need a pivot to tilt around that's going to act a bit like a neck or a head. So let's add a node in the middle that can just be a node 3D, and I'm going to call that neck. If we double click on the node itself over here on the left in the scene tree, we can type in a name, so I'm going to call that the neck, and I'm going to move it up a bit. And that's about where I'm going to position the camera. It's also worth noting, the camera is going to be inside the bean. Interior faces cull by default in Godot, so there's no risk of us seeing the bean from the inside, although there is stuff we can do to make the outside of the bean invisible to the camera if we wanted to make the camera move around a lot. But in its current state, there's no risk of seeing the bean from inside. So now we've got that neck at the right position, we can hit Control A again and we can add a camera 3D. And you'll see we get a magenta shape indicating where the camera's looking in the viewport here. And if we click this preview button in the top left, we will be able to see what the camera can see currently, which is parallel to the floor view straight in the negative Z direction. So we're now at a point where we can try out our scene and see how things look when we run it. So if we click this play button in the top right, or F6, which runs the current scene, it will prompt us to save our scene. I'm going to call it 3D level. And now we can see our game running. There's a key problem though, and that's that we don't have a world environment set up. As a result, there's no lights or information on how all the materials should be presented to the player. This can be quite confusing because in the viewport we can see there is all this information and lighting already there. And that's because scenes in Godot have a preview environment that's set up just to make things easier to develop in without needing to add an environment to every scene you work on. We can add that preview environment to our scene with the 3 dots at the top of our viewport. So if we jump back into here and we click these 3 dots, you'll see we get a preview sun and a preview environment panel, and the bottom left and right there are buttons to just add those straight into our scene. So we can click add sun to scene, we can open it up again and we can click add environment to scene. And now you'll see in the top left of our scene tree we have a world environment and we have a directional light. Now if we run the scene again, it will look as we expect. This is one key change from Godot 3 to Godot 4. In Godot 3 there was a default environment in the file system that had this information that would automatically run in every scene you run. That was removed to make the file system less busy, but it means you need to know about this approach to adding environments. So now we've got our environment and camera set up, we can start focusing on making our player move. If we click on our character body, and then we click this little picture of a scroll with a green plus at the bottom right, we can add a new script to that character body. This is what's going to control how our character moves and how our camera works. And one of the other nice things in Godot 4 is there are templates for scenes built in. So right off the bat, if I click Create Now, there's this template for basic 3D movement. I'm going to want to name this script quickly to player, and then click Create. You'll see we've got a full script already in here, about 32 lines long total. And what this does is it allows our character to move and jump with the arrow keys and spacebar. And even just with that, if I run the scene again, you can see I can move left, I can move right, I can jump, I can do all those basic things. Which is nice enough, but the arrow keys aren't really ideal. We probably want W, A, S, and D. So to change the input to use those custom inputs, we need to go to Project in the top left and jump to Project Settings. When we're in there, there's a tab called Input Map. Here's where we can define new inputs by their name and assign what keys control them. So we can have a forward action, a back action, a left action, and a right action. And then for each of those, there's a plus on the right. You can click Add Event over there and enter the input event you want to control that input event. So if I hit W, whenever the player presses W, we will get that forward input event being fired off. Let's click OK, and let's repeat for the rest of them. So for back, let's add B. For left, let's add A. And for right, let's add D. I must have said D twice there, I'm almost certain I did. For back, let's press S. Okay, so now, if we scroll down in this bit of code that's already made for us, there's a part where they get our input direction, this var input dir line. It then takes a bunch of inputs defined by us and will create a two-dimensional vector that represents the way we want to move based on those inputs. So at the moment, if we just swap out the inputs for our new ones, it will just work as it will work as it did previously, but with our buttons. So let's replace UI left with left, UI right with right, up with forwards, and down with back. And now if I run, W moves forwards, S moves back, A moves left, and D moves right. Okay. Now all that's left is getting the camera hooked up. So our camera has a neck pivot. That's because we want to keep the way we're rotating left and right separate from the way we're rotating up and down, because we're going to use the way we're rotating left and right to figure out what way forwards is when we're telling our player character to move. So if I go up to the top, we need to define the two nodes we want to get access to, that being the neck and the camera. Godot 4 uses annotations to do this. There is an @onReady annotation. That replaces onReady from Godot 3. And after that, we can define a node and then the path to it. So we can define our neck as var neck, and that just defines it as a variable, and colon equals will assign a path and guess the type of the object we're assigning to it. So this is going to create a neck that's got the right type for what our neck is, which is a node 3D. We can then get a path to a node in our scene tree with the $, and then if I type neck, it should autocomplete. So that path is relative to our character body node. Our neck is a child of it, and it's an immediate child, so its relative path is just the name of it. We then want to do the same thing for the camera. This time though, its path is neck/camera 3D because it's a child of the neck. If you're ever confused about what a path is, you can just drag it straight from the scene tree into the spot you want, and it will put the correct path. And then let's rename this variable to camera. Now we have those two variables, we want to handle capturing input events from the mouse. We do this with a virtual function called unhandledInput. So what unhandledInput does is it listens for every input event that happens, and it calls it for every function that has an unhandledInput event virtual function, and we can narrow down what the event is to figure out what just happened. We want to capture the mouse, so we can actually listen to what way it's moving left and right. We can capture the mouse with this little bit of code here. We want to start by checking if the event is an input event mouse button. So what that means is if we have clicked any button in the game window, we want to start capturing the mouse, and that means the mouse cursor won't be visible and freely moving around the screen. Then afterwards, we also can check if they've pressed UI cancel. This is the escape key. This lets us free the mouse, which makes it a lot easier for testing, so we can actually click the close button on the window and the like. So if they press the close button, we just make the mouse mode visible again. Now we're capturing the mouse, we can listen to mouse motion events and rotate the neck and camera in a matching manner. So I can then go and add this little bit, and we can check if the mouse mode is captured. So if the mouse is actually being listened to, we can rotate the neck relative to the relative mouse motion. So whenever an event is an input event mouse motion, we will get a relative property. If you hold Control and click on input event mouse motion, it will go into the documentation for that specific object, and you see we get a property called relative. This relative property gives us an x and a y value for how far our mouse has moved, either left and right or up and down, in this specific input event. So if we go back, we subtract how far we've moved left from rotate y, and that means that our neck will rotate left when our mouse moves left, and will rotate right when our mouse moves right. We want to multiply that result by a very small number, because this will rotate in radians, so about 3 is almost a full rotation, and our mouse moves in multiple pixels at a time, so we'll be doing multiple rotations at a time. You can just fiddle with what a sensible sensitivity would be, export it as a variable, whatever you wish. I just multiplied it by 0.01 and it felt about right. After we've rotated the neck left and right, we can rotate the actual camera up and down. And we will do exactly the same thing, but we will rotate the X property and we will use the relatives Y property because that's the amount we've moved up or down relative to the last frame. The last thing we want to do is limit how much we can rotate up and down, because if you rotate all the way up, you'll start spinning around backwards and most necks stop at about straight up. So we can use a clamp function. Clamp is a built-in function that limits a value to be at least a minimum and at most a maximum. So this will limit it so you can't be less than -30 degrees and you can't be more than +60 degrees. And we just pass our camera rotation.x through that clamp and update it. So now, if I just run that, I can move right, I can move left, I can look right, I can look left, and I can look up and down. And I can jump, and you've got pretty much a whole character controller. But you'll notice a key problem, and that's no matter what way you look, forward is always in the starting direction, left's always in the starting direction, and right's always in the starting direction, and back's always in the starting direction. So what we need to do is we need to make it so that when we push W, we go forward in the direction the camera's pointing. Now that's done with a basis. At the moment, our game script is calculating the forward direction using transform.basis. Basis is part of an orientation, and it pretty much tells us what way we think is forwards. And at the moment it's using the root of our character, what way that thinks is forwards. What we can use instead is we can use what way the neck that we've rotated around thinks is forwards, and then move in that direction instead. So what we do here is we pass in neck dot before that. So instead of using the transform of our root character, we will use the transform of our neck instead, which has rotated into the appropriate direction. And we need to get rid of this colon because it can no longer infer the type. And with that done, I hit F6 again. If I look right and I walk forwards, I'll go forwards, and everything is relative to our neck. And that's it. We've got a character controller that can walk around. It's all done. So with all that said and done, in about 10 lines of code, thanks to the new templates, you can have a first-person character controller set up in the wonderful world of Godot 4. The engine's becoming more and more stable with every iteration. It's on Alpha 10 now, and I really do recommend trying using it for any projects. If you want to learn more about the features available in Godot 4, check out my other videos or my course, Godot for Beginners, in which I give you access to a load of source code showing off key examples of how the new features in Godot 4 can best be used, as well as written guides. And the latest thing I'm working on is a complete roguelike card game that is made all using Godot 4, and it gives you an example of how an entire project fits together. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.